Right, so try to jump on this as quick as possible because we've just had maintenance plus a lovely little sneak preview of the title update, and Strikers has been changed. So is Strikers worth it? Nope, not really. It is certainly better than what it was, but this is my standard sort of DPS build. Shield Splinterer, 3-piece prov with the gift and sacrifice, Grupo gloves, Fox's Prayer knees, and then a Dodge City holster. I think some pretty good stats, if I do say so myself. I'm just going to go straight in and start slamming the targets. I average about 600,000 damage a hit, and I can get just about 10 mil DPS. Pretty damn good, and I'm not even using an entire magazine. Body shots, not quite as high, but certainly still nothing to scoff at. This is a name delete on Heroic apparently, and I can take them out in one magazine. So let's have a look at Strikers. Now this is actually where it gets a little bit weird and annoying, because initially you don't do that much at all. Like, I'm doing less than half of my actual overall damage pretty much. However, once you start ramping it up, you can get into some pretty decent damage numbers. Still nowhere near as much as my standard DPS. Now this leads to now two problems. First problem being getting your stacks up quick enough to the point of where you can now start doing decent DPS for a actual DPS build. If this was like a, I don't know, 2 or 3 blue, I'd be happy with it, but yeah. Like, the headshots are basically near enough on par with the body shots of my previous build. So yeah, we have two problems. One, the ramp up. Two, we now lose 2 stacks per second, which means it's going to take roughly 3 magazines. 50 rounds, admittedly, times 2 is 100 stacks, but we lose 2 per second regardless now. Which means that at minimum, you're going to lose 4 stacks. So you need 3 magazines to hit your max stacks and capabilities. From there, it starts doing some weird stuff. Simply because although your RPM will be higher, which can lead to some misleading DPS numbers on the range. I had one where it went to about 12 mil, but it still took a magazine and a half to kill the enemy, which was interesting, shall we say. So overall, just from doing a DPS check on the range, yeah, Strikers is really not being that comparable. Now annoyingly, there's probably going to be a lot of people saying I've not got this set up most optimally. At the moment, in order to get the most out of Strikers, you have to be using the chest and the backpack. That is a 65% multiplicative damage bonus. If you don't, you get a 25% multiplicative damage bonus. And then from there you lose out. You literally lose a stupid, and I mean stupid, amount of DPS, which is quite hilarious. Even then, using the sacrifice on top of it, that will put you to a lovely 55% multiplicative bonus. With everything I have set up in here, with all my damage to targets out of cover, plus the bonuses from Strikers set, I'm at about 82% amplified damage as like a multiplicative set, whereas normally at base you'd be at about 55, adding in sacrifice, Fox's Prayers, Contractor's Gloves, charges to damage out of cover on the weapon, etc, etc. You don't have as much, but where you're able to get more attributes, your overall baseline before the multipliers kicks in is so much higher. So you don't need as many multipliers because your baseline is a lot higher. Like, it's essentially, we're doing like 10 times 2, which is 20, and then we're doing 30 times 1.5, which is 45, in case people don't know. However, as we all know, testing things out on the range doesn't mean that it's particularly bad out in the world, and so I thought I'd just run around for a bit and see what happens. And yeah, where the damage is so friggin' low, I get rinsed a lot. It was very hard to maintain stacks in open world. Potentially could be a bit easier and a bit simpler in missions, but regardless, you will be hard pressed to maintain maximum stacks, which is the only point where using strikers actually gets competitive with dealing decent to okay damage numbers, and only then is it actually even remotely worth using if there was a way to maintain maximum stacks for more than 2 friggin' seconds, which there isn't. So the moment you need to take cover or move around or throw a grenade or close in on the enemy, you lose far too much for what the benefits actually give you. So it's really not worth it. It's a lot better than it was, I will give it that. It is potentially now usable in some form, however it will not place the current go-to. It is no longer the Div 1 gold standard. It probably won't be again, simply just because we have too many other things that are OP as hell. Another thing that you lose out on, despite the fact that it's not that great for damage, or all of the attributes that come with normal branded gear sets, is the utility we can incorporate into other builds. I just need 3-piece Providence defense on this, and I've got a good baseline standard of decent damage. Along with the core attributes and the sub attributes, the 3-piece set for Providence defense, and then the mod slots, I am able to get out some pretty decent-ish damage. From there I can start potentially adding in some utility, some more armour. Despite the fact that this build runs perfect last cannon, I feel it's actually quite survivable, because if everything gets too hectic, I can quickly swap to my Regulus plus my Dodge City holster and just be like, nah mate, delete. And I find that to be one hell of a utility, which I can utilise, because you have to use 4-piece strikers to actually get anything worthwhile out of it. You're left with then 2 slots to then utilise how you would wish, and it just cuts too much out of your build. You're not able to push as hard, you're not able to be as aggressive as much, and you lack a lot of utility. There are potentially going to be a few niche uses for strikers in the future. I imagine some crazy speedrunners will come up with some weird strat which uses 4-piece strikers now, or the return of 4-piece strikers for Razorback, etc, etc. But as an open world gear set, it is probably still the worst set going, simply because it just doesn't give you enough for the drawbacks that gear sets inherently have, because they typically only have one attribute. They have their core attribute and then one additional attribute, so you lose too much in using it, and the damage amplification is nowhere near enough. Maybe if we got the 4-piece bonus perks from just using 2 pieces, just the chest and the backpack, to increase our stacks to 100 with the 0.65 multiplier rather than 0.5, that could potentially be worthwhile, because then that leaves you 4 pieces to run around and change, and you could still use Dodge City and Fox's Prayer and Contractor's Gloves and other weird and wacky things. That could be worthwhile, but as it stands right now, I'm going to say it outright before some weird and crazy YouTuber goes, oh look at the new meta, it's 4-piece strikers. Wrong. At minimum you lose 1.7 million DPS per magazine. On average, the loss per bullet is around 200,000 damage. I'm going to say on average because obviously it ramps up over time, but even with just one magazine from 0 to potentially 50, you are losing a stupid amount of DPS. It really is not worth it. Doesn't mean don't use it. Like I said, it is a hell of a lot better than it was, and it could potentially lead to some fun memery, but as a open world DPS or even missions, no. sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Anyway, that just about does it for this video. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.